The People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Friday, November the 15th, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Nana Akweer. Whilst many pensioners are worried about freezing this winter, what is the Chancellor going to do about it?
Publishing the interim report of the Pensions Investment Review. It sets out our plans to create Canadian and Australian-style mega funds.
Well, good morning to you as well. The mega funds plan aims to free up £80 billion to invest in British business and infrastructure, as the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey used the same event to say that we need closer ties with the EU after Brexit.
Impact on trade seems to be more in goods than services, which I don't think is particularly surprising. But it underlines why we must be alert to and welcome opportunities to rebuild relations while respecting that very important decision of the British people.
Donald Trump's team gets bigger as he appoints Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his health secretary. We'll give you the lowdown on him in just a tick.
And UK's migration meltdown. Britain sees the biggest migration surge of any rich nation as it's revealed that the previous government wasted £15 million of taxpayers' money on an asbestos-filled migrant camp in East Sussex.
And breaking news this morning as UK economy growth slows to 0.1% between July and September. The Chancellor says she's not satisfied.
We're 4 months into this government. There's a lot more to do to turn around the growth performance of the last decade or so.
Thought police powers. The journalist Alison Pearson is being investigated by Essex Police for a non-crime hate incident, or allegedly stirring up racial hatred in her social media post last November, and 3 police forces were called in to investigate.
The baddest man on the planet, 58-year-old Mike Tyson, takes on YouTuber-turned-boxer Jake Paul in the early hours of Saturday morning. Will it be the fight of the century or just maybe a celebrity circus?
I don't know. Listen, I've looked at what a lot of the things the Chancellor is planning to do. I'm not convinced about a mega pot for pensions, because all the money in one pot. When I did my business degree, the first rule number 1, never put all your eggs in one basket. That was the first thing, and they're not. I don't think they're spreading the risk enough.
Yeah, I thought when you invest and you try and get good returns, you're meant to diversify. As you said, if you put all your eggs into one basket, you're taking a massive risk. Maybe big returns, but it's a risk. And also 0.1% growth in the first 3 months of Labour's administration. Compare that to the last 6 months of the Tory government, 0.7% growth, the best in Europe, the best in decades. What does that tell you?
I don't know. You know, the Labour government would argue that they were left a £22 billion black hole. But what do you think? Get in touch. We'd love to hear your thoughts on pensions and whether you think Rachel's plan is a good one. Send us your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, the UK's economy barely grew between July and September, with uncertainty about the budget being blamed for weak growth. It was expected to meet the same 0.2% growth figures reported in Germany and Japan, but instead the economy grew by 0.1%. The GDP figures have pushed the UK towards the bottom of the G7 growth table for the third quarter of the year. Responding to today's figures, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says they're extremely disappointing. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves says she's not satisfied with the figures.
Not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt, either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years. That's why in my Mansion House speech last night, I set out a number of measures to unlock long-term patient capital from our pension funds to get better returns to savers, but crucially to free up investment, to invest in start-up and scale-up businesses and in the opportunities for infrastructure investment in Britain.
Rachel Reeves told City Chiefs last night that she plans to create pension mega funds that will power growth in the economy and reward British savers. In her first Mansion House speech as Chancellor, Ms Reeves announced plans for the mega funds, which she said could bring in £80 billion to invest in businesses and infrastructure. She addressed issues of financial instability and promised to make economic growth Labour's, quote, central mission in the coming years. The megafunds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds take advantage of size to invest in assets that have higher growth potential. And Gary Lineker says hosting Match of the Day for more than 2 decades has been an absolute joy and privilege, but it's the right time for him to exit and someone else to take over the helm. Well, the 63-year-old will step down as host at the end of the season. Speaking on his podcast, The Rest is Football, he said all things have to come to an end. Lineker has refused to speculate who would be taking his place as rumours grew around Mark Chapman, the regular Match of the Day 2 presenter, Football Focus host Alex Scott and BBC Sports coverage presenter Gabby Logan. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana, and hello and welcome to you at home. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akwe.
Right, well, let's get stuck in because the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is planning what she calls the biggest pension reform in decades.
She wants to create growth in the economy by merging the UK's 86 council pension schemes into what she calls a few mega funds. But should this really be top priority when it comes to looking after our pensioners?
Well, we can now get the view, excuse me, of the chair of the Women Against State Pension Inequality, which is WASPI, Angela Madden. Angela, is this madness? Does this sound sensible to you?
Hey, good morning, Nana. Good morning, Ben. I think it shows a bit of innovative thinking on behalf of the Chancellor. The government, this particular government, has put growth at the centre of their whole campaign. And in order to fund that growth, we need different sorts of ideas. And I think this idea sounds to me like a good one. It's utilising public pension funds, both to get more for the pensioners and for the states, because there are a lot of projects that need to be funded. So yes, I think broadly it's a good idea.
Though, about the risk involved, because, I mean, investors and economists would suggest that by putting all your eggs into one basket and not diversifying your investments and, I guess, your bets and your gambles, you're taking a bigger risk. Yes, there may be bigger returns, but if those investments go wrong or don't go as planned, your returns won't be as lucrative.
Yes, the risks would have to be managed, Ben. I believe that Ms Reeves intends to create 8 different funds. So presumably each fund would go into a different government-based objective, or project. Now, obviously, the biggest failure in government projects in recent years has been HS2. Had that been invested in, yes, that probably would have been a dire mistake for any investment fund that chose to invest in that. So there would need to be guarantees. But there's so much government work that needs to be done, in the green energy company, in rebuilding our failing schools and council buildings, and all of those sorts of things. I think, so long as it's what we would call blue chip or safe investments, then that's a reasonable way to go. And those funds are actually being created and used in order to benefit our economy, which has got to be a good thing.
Angela, do you think that the government just doesn't trust local councils to manage their own funds? Is that it? That they want a centralised state managing things because they just don't think local authorities are competent enough?
I don't think so. I think local authorities have different sizes, and the amount of money each one could invest in central projects would be quite low and perhaps wouldn't achieve the objectives, both in terms of returns to that particular fund and for the economic growth that Rachel Reeves is looking for. So I don't think it's a question of trust. I think it's a question of utilising the assets we have a little better than they can be utilised now. And she will have done her homework. I mean, this works quite well in Australia and in Canadian pension funds. So at least there's a model to go on. It's not sort of brand new thinking, but I think it is quite innovative thinking. And Ben, if we carry on doing the same thing as we've always done, we'll always have the same result, won't we? So we need to do something a little more innovative to get different results.
Well, it's good to hear you saying that you feel quite positive about it, because a lot of the things that the Chancellor has done, a lot of people are feeling quite negative about it. In your view, then, if you feel that this is the right way forward, do you think that Rachel needs to implement this quite quickly?
I think she should start implementing it, very quickly, almost as soon as she could. And I think, I mean, obviously she'll need to hire some really good people to make sure that it works. Because
that's the worry. If it doesn't work, or these mega funds are not profitable, or the risk is spread too lightly, then we could find ourselves with a pension nightmare. Yeah, and they are government. It would be government projects only, though, wouldn't it? I mean, it's not going to be invested on the stock market or anything that risky. So long as the projects are thought through, achieve what they're supposed to achieve, then I think it will be a good thing. There is a lesson to be learned from HS2, and I'm hoping, this administration has learned that lesson, not to allow any project that it runs to run away with the costs the way that one did.
Yep. OK, Angela Madden, thank you for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. Some views coming in on gbnews.com/your say. Leo, you've said, I wouldn't trust this government with the petty cash tin, never mind the nation's pension funds. Well,
I'm kind of with them. Government projects, and she's even mentioned HS2. Angela mentioned HS2, and that has gone so badly over budget that if we're there to be getting money from some of their investments, I'd be quite frightened.
But Nana, they've now got the former HS2 bean counter on board as a money efficiency czar. He's on 50k a year for 1 day's work a week. Well, he value for money. He also helped to sort out the efficiencies for the Olympics, which I think was 4 times over budget. Well, there we go. We're in good hands. We're in good hands. Rachel Reeves this morning defending the 0.1% growth in the first 3 months of the Labour administration. She says she's not satisfied, and she said we had to take a number of difficult decisions on spending on welfare, on tax in the budget. Economists this morning, I was listening to them on the radio, they were saying that because Labour delayed the budget so long and gave no clues away to what would be in there for weeks and weeks and weeks of uncertainty and fear and doubt, that's partly why growth has taken a bit of a beating. Well, of course, it would do, but also the NI raid on employers, which is discouraging employers for employing employees, and companies who are shrinking or not investing. So there are some store chains that aren't going to be opening more shops, so that's fewer jobs, and then people are becoming unemployed because of the NI thing. So I just think all you're ending up with is people now on the benefit system or on the welfare. Even if 50% of those people don't go back into work, you're now supporting those people. The welfare bill expected to balloon to £100 billion a year in the coming years. What do you think Jeremy Hunt's thinking this morning? He's woken up, he's had a coffee, kissed his kids good morning, and he's seen that the growth is paltry, to say the least. Do you think he's chuckling into his cornflakes? Well, he might do, because he's probably got some money saved up, and interest rates are going up on top of that. So if you've got some savings and the banks do pass on the hike, which I doubt they will, then you're onto a good one. I mean, it's just... Well, mortgage rates have creeped up the last couple of days. Of course they have. A lot of products have come off the market now. But stay with us, because up next, 58-year-old former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson will enter the ring with YouTuber turned fighter Jake Paul in the early hours of Saturday morning. Should this ever have been allowed to happen? Why not? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
What about train Wi-Fi? The Times. It's so funny the Times did this story because I was on the train yesterday trying to do some work and connecting to the Wi-Fi, and it happens all the time. It just doesn't work. It's pathetic. And then I opened the Times and they've done a massive investigation. Loads of different rail routes from north to south.
Was that the James Bond thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. What's
I think, well, that passenger got through, or almost got through, one episode. One James Bond movie in 8 hours.
But you know, it's interesting. We call it train Wi-Fi, but it isn't. It's just really a SIM card on a train, really. So if your own phone's not going to get signal, why would we assume that the train's going to have signal? It just doesn't work like that. Unless you're in Japan or South Korea, whose infrastructure is infinitely better than ours, you're just not going to get signal. You have to download those films way before you get on
There is technology that can help with that. You know, there really is. If they found ways to put it underground, they can get it on ground and get you going. I definitely think, you know, with the price that we're paying for these tickets, they can get the Wi-Fi going. There is technology.
That's why it's so frustrating, isn't
Call
it?
Elon, get a Starlink. Let's go.
If you're a passenger paying hundreds of pounds for a season ticket or whatever you call it, and you know, commute to work every single day, and you're paying all this money, and you can't.
It's so expensive. You'd expect Wi-Fi at the basic. Yeah, exactly.
But it happens with phone signal as well. I'll be walking down London in Park Lane or somewhere else, or down on the south coast. I just don't have phone signal, and I think to myself, what on earth is going on?
Doesn't it feel like 5G's made it worse, though?
Yeah.
Because I feel like 4G, that didn't happen so much, but 5G just feels like...
Yeah, and then I always get this little E in the top corner of my phone, and I don't get any signal. I think it's got worse over the past couple of years. Yeah, especially with 5G. I agree with that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good morning. It's just coming up to 49 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is GB News on Britain's Newsroom. We've got some breaking news, by the way. We just received some news that Davina McCall has been diagnosed with a brain tumour.
Yes, she posted on Instagram in the last hour saying that she's having surgery today on what is called a very rare colloid cyst that affects only 3 in a million people. She explained that she received the diagnosis by chance after booking a health scan, and she said in a video, I was offered a scan which I thought was going to be ace, but it turned out I had a benign brain tumour, which is very, very rare, 3 in a million. It's quite big, 14 millimetres wide, and it needs to come out because if it grows, it would be bad. So I'm having it removed. Say a prayer for me. I'm in good spirits.
Gosh, so 14 millimetres wide, that is quite big, isn't it? Poor woman. Well, I hope she's all right. We'll bring you as much as we can on that as we have it. But next up, of course, it's the big event. Sports broadcaster and boxing expert Paul Coit is here with us. Not you, Paul. You're not the big event.
Got my hopes up for a minute. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do we think about this then? Jake Paul, YouTuber, 27 years old, will fight former world champion Iron Mike Tyson, who's 58. Well, do you want to see how Mike looks these days? Have you seen
Yeah.
Have a look at this. See what you think of this. This kind of reminds me of I was saying of me this morning, actually, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Let's have a look at it now. This is Mike Tyson. There we are. There's Iron Mike. Look at. I wouldn't wear. I'd wear maybe a boxer short or something. You think so? Yeah. So there's Mike there. Now, this all seems very friendly and innocuous there. It's the weigh-in. He's very happy. He's weighed in. But you've got Jake Paul. He's standing over to his left-hand side. And then Mike will be brought over, and then you'll get the obligatory handshake. But as always happens in these big boxing press conferences, something's going to kick off, isn't it?
228.4 kilos, is that?
No, that's pounds.
It's pounds?
That's 228.4 pounds.
That would be 400 pounds, I think.
What's that in stone?
Yeah, 228 kilos is going to be... Now, there he goes. Now he's going to go to see Jake, and... he's there already.
He slaps him.
Now, is it real or is it staged? He did give him a bit of a smack there, didn't he? But the thing is, these fights are so popular. It's going to be on Netflix. We've got Jake Paul's going to earn 30 million out of it, whatever. You've got Tyson's going to earn around 15 million.
15, 1.5. Why should he be getting less? He should be getting more.
Well,
he's the big name, Jake Paul. I mean, I'm not being funny.
Nana, to you and me, he would be the big name. To everybody else, Jake Paul is the big name now.
There is an element of the fix and the pantomime.
I think so too, yeah.
I'm not saying they're not going to fight properly, but, you know, it's a bit of theatre. It's a YouTuber. There's been allegations in the past that Jake Paul has maybe given some generous benefits to people he's faced in order to maybe go down a bit easy or, you know.
But let's face it.
I hope Mike wins.
Well, I think we all do. I think we'd all love to see Mike do it.
I think he could win. I think that psychological edge of slapping someone in the face, I don't think Jake Paul was expecting
that. Is that how you got your psychological edge in the past? Is that what it was?
Very good, darling, really. No, but what he's done there is created a sort of, an element of surprise where you can't be trusted.
Mike Tyson is... I mean, we know what Mike Tyson's like. I mean, multi-world champion. He beat Frank Bruno, and then he had a trainer called Customato back in the day, and he was the guy that got him into boxing, kept him on the straight and narrow. And back in the early days, Mike Tyson would talk about all the other great pugilists and all the great boxers. Then when Cuss died, things then went off the rails. And then we saw Mike Tyson all over the place. Ended up doing time in prison, ended up coming back. But he hasn't fought professionally for 19 years.
I mean, whose ear did he bite off?
That was Amanda Holyfield, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Amanda Holyfield. Let's not forget that.
Jake Paul is wearing a diamond-encrusted ear guard for this fight.
Is he really?
Yeah, as a
got one over the teeth and then something over the ears as well. But and also, if it is a proper fight, is it going to be dangerous? And I'm trying to work out who it's dangerous to. Because, OK, he's 58 years old, but this is a proper boxer. But then Jake Paul is 27, so is it going to be dangerous towards Mike? I don't know.
Well, you know, because Mike is very experienced, and also there is that sort of edge where it's Mike Tyson you're fighting.
Yeah.
Jake Paul is like this little thing, jumping up and down, jumping up. So I think it'll be more to do with, if it goes on for a long time, will Mike Tyson have the stamina?
Do you think he's a nice fella, though, Tyson?
I think he's probably lovely.
What do you think there, Ben?
Of course, he's had a very coloured history, to say the least.
Did you say he was a nice man?
Well, I've seen some podcasts with him. Do you know what he does now in his spare time? Well, he's got a cannabis farm in Los Angeles. He grows cannabis.
He's very calm these days.
Very calm,
Well, look, this is what Mike said. Is he a nice man? This is his answer.
There's nothing nice about me. I'm not a nice person, no. I'm a decent person. I try to do the right thing, but a nice person I am not.
Wow,
so he's a decent person, but he's not a nice person.
No, I don't know.
Don't let him hear you do that.
You're the second person to have said that so far.
He has to say that he's not a nice person, though, because otherwise, if you thought he was a softie, which he probably is underneath all that, then you'd think, this guy's easy.
It's all about the money, though, isn't it? It's what it's all about, and the interest. And the only other thing is that, does it take away from boxing as a sport, or does it add to boxing because it brings more people into
I think it takes it away, and boxing's been under threat from UFC, MMA for a while, and I think this kind of YouTuber stuff is a desperate act to kind of, try and revive the sport. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest.
I think I'll watch it. Quickly.
You know what? I don't know. I want Tyson to win. I can't tell you, Nana. I just don't know.
Paul
I
Quinn.
really don't know.
A pleasure as ever. Well, up next, we'll tell you all about the latest addition to President-elect Donald Trump's top team. And it's upset quite a few people. I don't know why. Why should they be upset about it? He can pick who he likes. And they've expected us to tolerate Joe Biden. Stay with us, though, because this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Here's your weather with Aidan McGivern.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, largely cloudy, especially in the north, and there will be some rain out there, particularly for northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. These drizzly outbreaks of rain, not amounting to much, but making it feel rather unpleasant with a lot of low cloud in these areas as well. Brighter skies for eastern Scotland, parts of northeast England, but the best of the sunshine will be through parts of Wales, the Midlands and the south of England. A very pleasant day here, highs of 11 to 13 Celsius with light winds. Similar temperatures further north, but not feeling nearly as pleasant for northwestern parts because of the brisk breeze, and also because the rain's going to turn heavier and more persistent later on for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. In fact, a narrow but fairly intense band of rain begins to move in during the evening into northwest Scotland. A short-lived spell, but could be quite lively while it lasts. Ahead of that, Northern Ireland, Northern England staying largely cloudy with some low cloud about and some drizzle. Likewise for North Wales. But we keep the clear skies for some time in the south, and under those clear skies, a few mist and fog patches will form overnight. Perhaps a touch of frost, some chilly pockets here and there, but actually the cloud does slowly increase from the north as the night goes on, and that will tend to clear the fog in places and leave temperatures at around the mid-single figures by dawn. Further north, we've got the band of rain sinking south across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then into Northern England and North Wales for Saturday morning. It's weakening, but it will be cloudy with outbreaks of rain for some time. In the south, mostly dry and bright, but further north, skies brighten, but it turns colder with these winds coming from the north-northwest, gales for northern Scotland and frequent showers, and these showers will be falling as sleet and snow for the north of Scotland.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M9 in Falkirk is partly blocked northbound between junctions 5 and 6 at Grangemouth after an accident causing queues. Train services between Selby and Doncaster are diverting by Goole again today because of an ongoing points problem. Buses replacing trains between Selby and Doncaster, and there are delays of up to half an hour to trains between Doncaster and Rotherham Central after a vehicle hit a bridge. In Powys, the A470 is closed each way south of Libanus after an accident causing queues. In Buckinghamshire, the A355 is closed south of Beaconsfield after an accident. In London, the highway is closed eastbound between Dock Street and Cannon Street Road at Wapping after an accident with queues back along Lower Thames Street. The M2 in Kent, the westbound entry slip roads partly blocked by an accident at junction 5 at Sittingbourne, and in Devon, the A3121's closed south of Ivy Bridge where a lorry's overturned.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock, it's Friday the 15th of November, we're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Acquare. Now, whilst many pensioners are worried about freezing this winter, I wonder if that's what the Chancellor is focused on.
Publishing the interim report of the Pensions Investment Review. It sets out our plans to create Canadian and Australian-style mega funds.
The Mega Funds plan aims to free up £80 billion worth of investment in British business and infrastructure, as the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey used the same event to say we need closer ties with the EU after Brexit.
Impact on trade seems to be more in goods than services, which I don't think is particularly surprising. But it underlines why we must be alert to and welcome opportunities to rebuild relations while respecting that very important decision of the British people.
May's migration meltdown. Britain sees the biggest migration surge of any rich nation as it's revealed the previous government wasted £15 million of taxpayers' money on an asbestos-filled migrant camp in East Sussex.
And some breaking news this morning. TV presenter Davina McCall has revealed she's undergoing brain surgery today to remove a benign tumour, and she's asked fans to pray for her.
Donald Trump's top team gets bigger as he appoints RFK Jr. to be his health secretary. We'll give you the lowdown on that.
The UK economy growth slows to 0.1% between July and September. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says she's not satisfied.
We're 4 months into this government. There's a lot more to do to turn around the growth performance of the last decade or so.
Yes, it's all about growth, the government says, but there's precious little sign of that at the moment. I interviewed the Chancellor for GB News a little bit earlier. We'll bring you some of what she said shortly.
Let us know what you think about all of the day's top stories. gbnews.com/your say. Thoughts and prayers with Davina McCall today, going into surgery for that benign tumour. Hope you're doing well there. And also the growth situation, Nana. This government was all about growth, growth. You know, all these buzzwords, and it turns out the first 3 months, no growth whatsoever, 0.1%.
Well, also policies that actively discourage it, so it doesn't really make any sense. And of course, Rachel Reeves isn't happy. None of us are happy. The farmers aren't happy. Pensioners aren't happy. Employers aren't happy.
Train drivers are happy.
Working people aren't happy. The only people that are happy are those that are in the public sector who do not have to worry about any of the NI increases or any of the other stuff.
And, yeah.
Or their pension, by the way.
I don't know. A long way to go yet with this Labour government. We'll keep holding them to account for you. Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Let's get stuck into your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, Nana, thank you very much. Well, the top stories. The UK's economy barely grew between July and September, with uncertainty about the budget being blamed for weak growth. It was expected to meet the same 0.2% growth figures reported in Germany and Japan, but instead the economy grew by 0.1%. The GDP figures have pushed the UK towards the bottom of the G7 growth table for the third quarter of the year. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves said she's not satisfied with the figures.
Of course, I'm not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt, either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years. That's why in my Mansion House speech last night, I set out a number of measures to unlock long-term patient capital from our pension funds to get better returns to savers, but crucially to free up investment to invest in start-up and scale-up businesses and in the opportunities for infrastructure investments in Britain.
While responding to those figures, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says they're extremely disappointing.
Further evidence that I'm afraid this government has no plan for growth. I mean, in fact, in the budget, as we know, national insurance on employers rocketing up, which is going to be inflationary, depress wages and lead to higher unemployment. So I'm afraid, you know, even if you look at the forecasts that the OBR produced at the time of the budget, that shows lower growth across the forecast than they were forecasting when we were in office back in the spring. So great to talk about growth, but there's a difference between talking about it and actually delivering it.
Well, Rachel Reeves told City Chiefs last night that she plans to create pension mega funds that will power growth in the economy and reward British savers. In her first Mansion House speech as Chancellor, Ms Reeves announced plans for the mega funds, which she said could bring in £80 billion to invest in businesses and infrastructure. She addressed issues of financial instability and promised to make economic growth Labour's central mission in the coming years. The mega funds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds take advantage of size to invest in assets that have higher growth potential. In other news, the Home Office spent £15 million buying a derelict prison contaminated with asbestos amid political pressure to stop housing migrants in hotels. That's according to Whitehall spending watchdog. The National Audit Office says the government department cut corners and paid more than it needed to in order to acquire the North Eye site in Bexhill-on-Sea in East Sussex. It said this was ultimately deemed unfit for its intended purpose due to contamination. Well, a report published today shows the site was bought for around £6.3 million, but the Home Office completed the sale in September last year for around £15.4 million, more than double what had been paid for the site 12 months earlier. Gary Lineker says hosting Match of the Day for more than 2 decades has been an absolute joy and privilege, but it's the right time for him to exit and someone else to take the helm. The 63-year-old will step down as host at the end of the season. Speaking on his podcast, The Rest is Football, he said all things have to come to an end. Lineker has refused to speculate who would be taking his place as rumours grew around Mark Chapman, the regular Match of the Day 2 presenter, Football Focus host Alex Scott and BBC Sports coverage presenter Gabby Logan. A new survey suggests around 6.7 million people plan to cut back on showers and baths to afford rising energy costs over winter. The poll for National Deadline found 45% of people are heading into the winter period worried about their finances, with 1 in 4 reporting it having a negative effect on their health and 1 in 5 saying they're losing sleep over money concerns. Latest Ofgem figures show energy arrears now stand at a record £3.7 billion. The average household energy bill increased by £149 a year from October the 1st, when the industry regulator raised its price cap to £1,717 for a typical household in England, Scotland and Wales. In sport, boxing champion Mike Tyson slapped Jake Paul at a charged weigh-in for tonight's controversial heavyweight fight in Texas. After both men had weighed in, Paul crawled across the floor before rising up to Tyson's eye line for the traditional final head-to-head. Well, 58-year-old Tyson then slapped his opponent across the face, prompting security and team members to rush in to separate the fighters. Paul, however, seemed unfazed. Instead, he blew kisses at the former champion. And just to finish on that breaking news that we've been telling you about this morning, that television presenter Davina McCall has revealed that she is undergoing brain surgery to remove a benign tumour. The 57-year-old shared that news in an Instagram post this morning, saying she has a very rare colloid cyst that affects only 3 in a million people. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for your company. It's 10:08 on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. I'm Ben Leo, and this, of course, is Nana Akweer.
Right, well, we were talking UK growth, so let's get stuck in. It's slowed down in the first 3 months of Labour.
GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster has spoken to Chancellor Rachel Reeves this morning. Let's take a listen.
Chancellor, this government has said over and over again that you are all about growth, but the figures out today, pretty anaemic. The projections from the OBR following the budget, not great either. When are we going to see real growth, and when is that going to feed through into people starting to feel a bit better off?
Growth is the #1 mission of this government, and after 14 years of stagnation, it can't come too soon. Obviously, I want the growth numbers to be stronger than those published today, which is why in the first week in office, I announced a comprehensive set of planning reforms and the creation of a national wealth fund. It's why in the budget I committed to the £20 billion of support for R&D and investment in infrastructure. And it's why in the Mansion House speech last night, I announced a comprehensive set of plans for our pensions industry to unlock long-term patient capital, to help small businesses and start-ups grow, and also to invest in infrastructure.
You mentioned wanting a closer relationship with the European Union in that speech, something that the Governor of the Bank of England talked about as well, in that it had hampered growth, Brexit had hampered growth. How's that going to work? And can you reassure GB News viewers, many of whom voted for Brexit, that Brexit is safe with this government?
However you voted in the referendum, it's undeniable that it is harder for businesses today to trade with our nearest neighbours and trading partners in the European Union. It doesn't mean that we should go back into the EU or the single market or customs union, but we do need a reset of that relationship, because it's in our British national interest to improve trade flows and make it easier for great British businesses to sell into European markets. And that's why next month I'll be attending the Eurogroup finance ministers meeting to make that case in Brussels for free and open trade.
Well, we're joined by GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, good to talk to you. Now, you spoke to Rachel earlier. There seems to be a lot of backlash on many of the things that Rachel has proposed. Did you manage to get any ideas as to whether she was planning to take back any of the stuff that she's doing, like the NI hike on employers or the farmers' inheritance tax or anything at all?
Yes, good morning, both. She's not budging on that. Now, at 11 o'clock, I asked her specifically about farming and the effect of those inheritance tax rises. We'll show that to you at 11 o'clock. But she is standing firm, and on the national insurance rise as well, which, of course, many businesses have said is going to mean that they can employ fewer workers, is going to be passed on ultimately in terms of higher costs, particularly markets where ultimately food may be more expensive because of it. So a lot of concerns about measures taken in the today, but the very disappointing growth projection following that budget too. Now, the Chancellor, of course, will say growth doesn't happen overnight. This takes time. There's very big systemic problems got to overcome. But I think it's going to be very difficult, because they promised to be a government of change. They promised growth. They said that growth was what was going to fund improved public services. And then, of course, they came along and put in £40 billion of tax rises. So, yes, I think a lot of people disappointed at the moment. They will need to try to turn that around as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. Great interview. We'll catch the full meat of that later on, and indeed on YouTube and elsewhere.
Right, well, let's move on to Donald Trump. He's chosen Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as his new health secretary, a job which will see him take charge of areas such as drug, food and vaccine safety.
And it comes as Trump also appointed Tulsi Gabbard as his US intelligence chief, sparking concerns that the intelligence community will become increasingly politicised.
Well, let's discuss this further with Professor of US Politics, David Dunn. So, David, let's talk about this appointment of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He has said some questionable things about vaccines and so on and so forth. Some people call him an anti-vaccine activist. Is that a justifiable title to give him?
Certainly, he has a long record of being a vaccine skeptic, and he repeats the unfounded claim that vaccines lead to autism, a thing which has been scientifically debunked. He's also controversial on a range of other things. He wants to actually liberalise the prescription use of psychedelic drugs. He's a big opponent of pasteurised milk. He prefers raw milk, and he is someone who is a big critic not only of Big Pharma, but also of the big food industry. He's a campaigner against ultra-processed foods. So he's an odd pick for to be in charge of the agencies that regulate all of those industries. And it's at odds in some ways with Trump's other policies of being friendly towards business, because Big Pharma and Big Food won't like what Kennedy has to say on these things.
Well, though, I mean, if you're a critic against ultra-processed food, I think that's a good thing, especially if you're looking after health and if you're a critic and you're prepared to question whether vaccines cause other things like autism, even though that has been debunked. It is wise to be looking into things that vaccines can cause.
Looking into, but if you don't actually look at the scientific or accept the scientific record, that makes you a controversial pick. And he will be a controversial pick when he comes up before the Senate, because the Senate will look at him with a high degree of skepticism. And I think you're right on the ultra-processed food question. There's an issue there that actually American diet has allegedly led to huge amounts of obesity. But of course, one of the other aspects of that is that the ultra-processed food is really cheap to produce. America's food industry produces really low-cost food compared to it being done in a more sustainable manner. If he was given the ability to actually change that, then that would be inflationary for food prices in America, something, of course, which Mr. Trump ran against.
But David, I mean, I can't really buy that argument. You're saying that people have to pay more to eat better food. You're going to live longer. I mean, you're eating... America is the unhealthiest nation on the planet. The majority of them are morbidly obese, and RFK Jr. wants to introduce education to the nation about how to eat properly. You're saying, well, hang on a minute, this is a bit odd because he wants to make people healthier and live longer, but it's going to come at a cost. I mean, surely that's worth it.
It's certainly worth it, but what I'm saying, I didn't say it wasn't worth it. What I said was it will be inflationary, because just now the additives are put into food so they can be transported through the food chain in a way that actually is stable and allows them to have long shelf lives and the like, which makes food cheaper. If food is produced more sustainably, produced locally, produced in a way that doesn't involve all these additives, then that actually makes the food more expensive, which is good for health. But what it does do is make food more expensive. If you look at the organic food here, it's much more expensive than non-organic food, for example.
Well, it depends if they are prepared to put certain kickbacks for people who do things properly and don't process the food. Depends where the benefits will be, and also for the United States itself, to have somebody who is looking into that and making sure that manufacturers do things properly, I think is only a good thing.
You've also got, for example, he wants to rid America of things such as high fructose corn syrup, which is banned everywhere. I mean, it's banned in the UK, it's banned across Europe. The Americans put it in everything. It's in Coke, they use it as a cheap sweetener, and that's been shown, many studies have shown, that is one of the major drivers of obesity in the US. I mean, he wants to ban that. That's not going to ramp up food prices.
It's interesting because one of the reasons why that is an ingredient in Coke and everything else is the power of the agricultural lobby in America, that they want stuff that they produce to be in there rather than sugar beet that's grown elsewhere. In Europe, for example, Coca-Cola has a different recipe. It's done with sugar beet, but of course, in America, it's the corn because of the farming lobby. So I think what we're into and we're going to see is a high degree of conflict between those different lobby groups, Big Pharma, Big Food, the traditional ways of the agricultural lobby, and the initiative that the RFK put forward for reforming the food process. I think I think his appointment is likely to be very interesting and possibly very good in terms of the the food industry. It's more the drug industry that's perhaps more problematic in terms of actually his objections to vaccines, and also he opposes fluoridation of water. That's a thing which has been a major benefit to avoiding tooth decay, but he again suggests that there's a link between that and lower intelligence and IQ in the American population, and there's no evidence to support that. So he has some fairly unusual views.
He also wants to ban pharmaceutical adverts on American television.
I think
that would be a great thing. I mean, I always find it amazing when you watch an American television and you see adverts for drugs. Well, why am I watching an advert more qualified than the doctor who actually has studied for 7 years and can recommend what's the best drug for me? So I think that's a very positive thing. So
yeah. Well, there's good and bad. So I think it's a wise appointment by Donald Trump. He's picked somebody who has varying views, and I think that can only be a good thing. David Dunn, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. He's the professor in US politics. This is GB News.
Yes, at GB News, we'd love to hear what you think. So every day we'll be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking, should civil servants be allowed a 4-day working week?
Now, we'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. The final result will be announced in Martin Daubney's show. I've got an idea. Can I give you a prediction on that, Paul?
Come on.
100%. 100% against the 4-day working week.
Well, they were threatening to strike, weren't they, the civil service, because they weren't allowed to work from home for 2 days a week. It's just not. They've got massive pay rises. They've got protected pensions. They're working from home half the time.
NI, they won't be affected, their employer, because the employer is really the government, so they don't want to pay.
It's ballooned to 90,000. The Tories wanted to cut 60,000 civil service jobs.
It's absurd, but you know what? That's the way it goes. For all our latest polls, news on how to vote, gbnews.com/poll.
OK, plenty more to come, including the Thoughts Police were out in force as it took 3 police forces, Sussex, Essex and Surrey, to investigate a hurty words tweets from the journalist Alison Pearson. Is free speech in peril? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really good to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
off. Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio.
You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:23, you're with Ben and Anna on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Right, joining us now, broadcaster Claire Muldoon and political commentator Andy Williams. We're going to do the papers. Should we start with the hurty words? 3 police forces called to probe a single tweet. Claire.
I mean, come on, this is 21st century Britain. We're waking up and this is a headline. It's really unbelievable. It is more Orwellian than actually I think George Orwell could have actually thought about in 1984. 3 police forces, the Met, Essex and Sussex, arrived, well, members of the police, one of the police forces, arrived at the doorstep of a Daily Telegraph reporter, Alison Pearson, on Remembrance Sunday at 9:40 in the morning. We're arresting you because we think you have put up something on Twitter or X that could have been hurty.
Well, she wasn't being arrested. She was asked to come to a voluntary interview. However, the caveat is that if you don't go to these voluntary interviews, you're put on a wanted list and then arrested.
It's not that voluntary.
But they couldn't tell her what the tweet was, and they couldn't tell her why they were there, actually. One, they were saying that it was a non-crime incident, and the other, it's now been reported that it is a crime.
Yeah, they've changed it, haven't they?
They've completely changed it. And it's this changing of the goalposts. As a citizen, I think we should all be really quite worried about, because you cannot think for 1 minute that anything is put up on a social media. Look what Dawn Butler did when...
Oh, my God. She retweeted...
When Kemi Badenoch was elected leader of the Conservatives. That's what? White supremacy in blackface? She got a slap in the wrist by...
She didn't even get any of that. And the thing is, it's Nels Abbey is the person who wrote the original tweet, which he took down. Now, I don't get why there seems to be no comeback for that, which is currently now
can I say...
deeply racist.
Absolutely,
and then this one,
it is.
Hurty was they won't tell her who's complained or what the tweet said.
So you've got that as well, and if Alison says it herself, if you want proof of two-tier justice, Nick Lowles, the CEO of Hope Not Hate, tweeted during the riots saying that Muslims had been attacked with acid. That was wrong. It was a lie. He deleted it. He apologised. Why was he not even spoken to by the police? Just saying.
No, I don't think that would be a police matter, would it?
Why not?
Well, why not?
Other people were jailed for it.
Because he made a complete... That's a factual inaccuracy, and he took it down...
Bernie Spotthorpe said, if this is true, XXX, she was arrested and held in custody. What's the difference?
No, what I would say
What's the difference?
I am not a free speech absolutist, right?
Answer the question, please. What's the difference?
Because
Nick Lowell saying, I've heard reports Muslims have been attacked with acid during the riots, stoking tensions, no doubt, deleting it, then apologising after a police force says that's wrong. What's the difference with Bernie Spotthorpe?
I'm not saying there's any difference.
Okay.
I'm saying that I don't understand why Alison Pearson is in trouble for this. All I am saying is I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't think you should be able to publish anything
but
whatsoever.
I think we would all agree with you on that.
No, absolutely. I'm just making
you're
that
the same
point.
as all of us. We all think that.
Yeah.
But what we don't accept is that when someone like Nels Abbey comes out and calls Kemi Badenoch in blackface or whatever he's calling, or even Wes Streeting makes comments that suggest that Susan Hall, if you vote for Susan Hall, you're a white supremacist, or all these things. How come nothing happens to them, but yet this thing, Alison Pearson, won't even tell us what it is that was written or who's complained, and suddenly she's being arrested.
Make you scared that this can happen?
What makes me most frustrated, actually, is that if you have your bike stolen or your mobile phone stolen, or if there's shoplifting, nothing happens because the police are too busy or they can't get there in time, apparently, or whatever. And then you've got 3 police forces focusing on something as trivial as this. That's what bothers me about
Well, we
it.
just did that. I think it was in Russia where they've arrested a couple of people, some women. One got 10 years, the other one getting 8 years for saying something about the war in Ukraine that wasn't agreed. What I'm feeling is that we are heading in the same direction. And we'd have been the first to criticise Russia on things like that.
Absolutely, and we're supposed to be, educated, implementers of what we do. A lot of people build their businesses on social media platforms. We communicate now, and now we've got this mass exodus from some of them, like X, which we're going to cover in a minute as well. And we just think, why? Why are we forced into thinking before we tweet.
Do you think that the government don't... Do you think this is something to do with Keir Starmer and X? Because he doesn't really like X, and Elon Musk has said a few things. Do you think that there may be sort of an attempt to kind of denigrate X in a way or scare people from posting anything on it?
I think so, and I also think that we can put the blame at Starmer for a lot of things that's happened, this complete omnishambles from the start to finish. And I think that he is building up a bit of a rapport and a support amongst left-leaning people to not say what they actually think, and that, as far as I'm concerned, drives opinion down. And I would far rather deal with people that I could see what they were thinking through their tweets, through their communications, other than it being drilled underground. And I think that was part of the problem with Prevent when they did the report. They were focusing far too much on the far right, and they did not focus on the terrorism. And the far right,
or the far left,
has been, or the far has been pushed down too much.
Just to add some balance to that, we had Maya Forstater on my show last night. I'm covering for Patrick. She was questioned last year in a similar situation about a gender-critical tweet she put out. She only found out yesterday the Met had dropped it, so she's cleared. But that happened under the Tory government. So
right, OK.
I don't think this is isolated just to Labour, because it happened under the previous Conservative government.
Right, so we are now faced with this Labour lot that are in, and I would far rather we had clear, concise comms from them and direction to the Met Police and then other police forces around them, and nationally as well, and we just stop this nonsense.
Well, of course, just a reminder that Alison Pearson wasn't arrested, but again, it was...
If she didn't cooperate, then I'm sure she would have been.
You know, well, we don't know what would have happened if she hadn't, but it would have been interesting. Let's move on. Match of the day. Potentially, Alex Scott could replace Gary Lineker. Progressive values should not hold, says Amanda Platel.
So I think what happened here is Amanda Platel approached her deadline and didn't have an idea for a column and wrote one in 10 minutes, because I've read this 100 times. This could have been from the 90s. It is absolute nonsense. Nobody anywhere has decreed that a woman should host Match of the Day. There has been rumours that Alex Scott might be in the running. She is an ex-footballer. She is a very, very talented presenter. There are rumours that Gabby Logan is in the running. There are also rumours that Mark Chapman is in the running, that Micah Richards is in the running. This is just absolutely made-up rubbish. A clarion call went out that the Archbishop of Canterbury should be a woman and that the new host of Match of the Day should be a woman. Nobody's saying that.
But hold on, the BBC have got form. Do you remember Doctor Who? Doctor Who has been pretty much everything. Doctor Who has it been a black woman? Has Doctor Who been a black woman?
No, Doctor Who's been a woman, and Doctor Who has been, I think, a black man. But it doesn't matter. But no, it's irrelevant, and this is totally irrelevant. You know, they decided in that case that was the best person for the job. Now, personally, I would like Gabby Logan to do it because I just think she's the best TV presenter.
Oh, I don't like her voice.
Well, fair enough, and people will have their own opinions. I think Mark Chapman would be a very good choice, but I genuinely don't think anyone at the BBC is there going, it's got to be a woman.
No, come on. Look, I worked at the BBC, and there was the running joke that if you were black, trans, disabled, or whatever, you got a job for life. So there was that joke there that, you know, they literally would look for all the characteristics because they get points. It's a tick box exercise. I mean, I was fine there.
I don't think that's borne out by, if you look at some of the most prominent people on TV and radio at the BBC, I just don't think that's borne out.
Do you know what? Tim Davies has said that we can't keep calling our staff talent, right? And I think that is the key here. I think when they're going to recruit for this role, and bear in mind people's viewing habits have changed completely now in watching TV. I don't think Match of the Day is the go-to now for sports results or, for the football. It's caught often on social media beforehand. However...
No, I don't. I've said this for the last few weeks. I don't think people tune into Match of the Day to see the presenter. They just want to see the highlights of the goal.
Exactly. However, I actually think they should take it a step further. I think they should recruit someone young, some unknown, and try and develop it that way, and have a team of presenters, and that'll cut the costs.
They don't need them. When Gary Lineker was off, it got higher viewers.
Apparently, Lineker offered to take a 400k pay cut just to keep the job, but the new boss at the Beeb, who heads Match of the Day, said, "Nah, you're out."
Yeah, he's trying to make it out like he chose to do that. You didn't, did you, Gary?
That's his first red card he's had from his time as a careerist, isn't he?
He was never even booked.
Never even booked, famously. Yeah.
Well, time to get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez. Thank you both.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories. The UK's economy barely grew between July and September, with uncertainty about the budget being blamed for weak growth. It was expected to meet the same 0.2% growth figures reported in Germany and Japan, but instead the economy grew by 0.1%. The GDP figures have pushed the UK towards the bottom of the G7 growth table for the third quarter of the year. Rachel Reeves said she's not satisfied with the figures.
Not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years. That's why in my Mansion House speech last night I set out a number of measures to unlock long-term patient capital from our pension funds to get better returns for savers, but crucially to free up investment to invest in start-up and scale-up businesses and in the opportunities for infrastructure investments in Britain.
Also responding to those figures, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says they're extremely disappointing.
Evidence that I'm afraid this government has no plan for growth. I mean, in fact, in the budget, as we know, national insurance on employers rocketing up, which is going to be inflationary, depress wages and lead to higher unemployment. So I'm afraid, you know, even if you look at the forecasts that the OBR produced at the time of the budget, that shows lower growth across the forecast than they were forecasting when we were in office back in the spring. So great to talk about growth, but there's a difference between talking about it and actually delivering it.
And TV presenter Davina McCall has revealed she's undergoing brain surgery to remove a benign tumour. The 57-year-old shared the news on Instagram in a post this morning saying she has a very rare colloid cyst that affects only 3 in a million people. She explained that she received the diagnosis by chance after booking in for a health scan, adding that she wants the public to pray for her, but that she's also in good spirits. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
OK, up next, farmers are gearing up to protest against the budget next week. We'll be speaking to some of them next. They're also mooting a strike this Sunday. And I spoke to one farmer last night who said that Christmas could be scuppered if they decide to down tools. Will there be turkey on your dinner table this Yuletide? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a sec.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, largely cloudy, especially in the north, and there will be some rain out there, particularly for northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. These drizzly outbreaks of rain, not amounting to much, but making it feel rather unpleasant with a lot of low cloud in these areas as well. Brighter skies for eastern Scotland, parts of northeast England, but the best of the sunshine will be through parts of Wales, the Midlands and the south of England. A very pleasant day here, highs of 11 to 13 Celsius with light winds. Similar temperatures further north, but not feeling nearly as pleasant for northwestern parts because of the brisk breeze, and also because the rain's going to turn heavier and more persistent later on for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. In fact, a narrow but fairly intense band of rain begins to move in during the evening into northwest Scotland. A short-lived spell, but could be quite lively while it lasts. Ahead of that, Northern Ireland, Northern England staying largely cloudy with some low cloud about and some drizzle. Likewise for North Wales. But we keep the clear skies for some time in the south, and under those clear skies, a few mist and fog patches will form overnight. Perhaps a touch of frost, some chilly pockets here and there, but actually the cloud does slowly increase from the north as the night goes on, and that will tend to clear the fog in places and leave temperatures at around the mid-single figures by dawn. Further north, we've got the band of rain sinking south across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then into Northern England and North Wales for Saturday morning. It's weakening, but it will be cloudy with outbreaks of rain for some time. In the south, mostly dry and bright, but further north, skies brighten, but it turns colder with these winds coming from the north-northwest, gales for northern Scotland and frequent showers, and these showers will be falling as sleet and snow for the north of Scotland.
the latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services remain suspended between Selby and Doncaster because of a points problem. Buses replace trains with trains diverting via Goole. In South Yorkshire, the A6123 is blocked where a vehicle's hit a bridge at Old Walk to the northeast of Rotherham. In Powys, the A470 is partly blocked by an accident south of Libanus, causing delays. In Northamptonshire, Mere Way in Northampton is partly blocked near the Toaster Road roundabout. In Buckinghamshire, the A355 is closed south of Beaconsfield after an accident near to the Hedgley turnoff. In London, the highway in Wapping is closed eastbound after an accident causing queues back beyond Tower Bridge. And in Devon, the A3121 is closed south of Ivy Bridge after an accident causing delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, good morning. 39 minutes after 10 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, this is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and me, Nana Aguirre.
Very good morning. Thanks for your company. Now, the row over the government's introduction of taxes for farms worth more than £1 million is continuing to grow.
Labour are defending the change despite swells of support for the planned protests by farmers next week.
And the Environment Secretary says 3/4 of farmers will pay nothing but data from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, suggesting 66% of farm businesses are over the threshold and will have to pay.
So we're now joined by GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is live from a farm in Lancashire. Jack, so you're there at the farm. Did you manage to speak to anybody there, and what have they said?
Well, where we are now is Gisborne Cattle Auction. If we just get cameraman to spin around, you can see this is where every week farmers come from across this region to look at selling cattle, to look at buying cattle as well. And Eleanor O'Neill is one of the auctioneers. We'll just speak to her now. I mean, Eleanor, since this decision to change the way that inheritance tax works, I mean, what are the conversations? Are people that come and sell their cattle here, buy their cattle here, are they nervous?
Very nervous. A lot of farmers are starting to wonder what they're going to do going forward. There's been some quite unnerving conversations recently with larger farmers that you would definitely not expect that are considering selling up to get round this, and things that they wouldn't even dream of after all the work and all the effort they've put into investing into such large farms. And likewise other smaller farmers. There's conversations weekly that just keep surprising you all the time, and it's very unnerving as an auctioneer, wondering where our business will go, therefore if farmers close down, and how we'll feed the nation.
But I say it's that knock-on effect, isn't it? It's that knock-on impact that your business could well, suffer because there won't be the farms to buy or sell the cattle.
Our business, abattoirs, everything, all the way down the food chain, there is going to be businesses that suffer. Supplementary businesses, farm supply businesses, it's just knock on tenfold as to what will suffer in the country, not just the farmers themselves, but all the industries that go around that.
All right, well, Fred Spurgeon, you're a land agent. I mean, are people thinking about selling up because of this announcement?
Yes, I think in the long term they are. They're genuinely shocked when this announcement was made. And I think the concern is that the government really don't realise what a family farm actually is. And some of the investment that they've been encouraged to do in modern technology and animal welfare, £1 million is a very small figure. So I think certainly the £1 million figure should be raised, and then the concerns for the family farm would be addressed. But yes, the telephone's been very busy all week. A lot of people looking for answers and genuine concern about going forward.
Carl Kempson, we've been on your farm this morning. You're mentioning to us earlier you're a first-generation farmer. You want to pass it on to your sons, to your grandson, to keep that farm going for generations. I mean, how are you feeling?
Well, it's like Ellen has just said, it's actual betrayal of the farmers coming forward. It's the young uns behind them that's going to feel the impact of us having to reduce the size of that farm just to pay a tax burden on the money that we've already paid tax burden on. That investment we've already paid for on the taxes, so we should be allowed to pass that on because they've worked for it. My two has worked on that farm ever since they could stand up. They've come home from school, they've run about after sheep, they've done every mortal thing that I did when I was younger, when I come into farming, when I took my first step into farming. and they deserve a future because they built it as much as what I built it, so they shouldn't be penalised for what they've done in these 30 years that they've been with us and nursed with us, and the true good stewardships of animals and of the land.
I mean, Jake Berry, you're the former MP here. I mean, how important are these farmers? Is this business, to the local rural economy?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Just in a few weeks since the budget, we put an entire industry in crisis. That's why I'm here, because I'm so passionate about it. Those tax changes we saw in the budget will be the death of the family farm in this country, and that has a huge impact for all of us. That's why GB News is doing such a great job, is getting around the country, talking to people, because everyone needs to know when they go to the supermarket this weekend or to their local shops, those shelves are going to be empty unless the government changes track, and hundreds of families up and down this country are going to end up without a home and without a farm, and that is not right for Britain.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you to all of us. We're going to hear a little bit more from our panel a little bit later on this morning as well. The government say that the changes to relief are about making sure relief that is fiscally responsible. They're trying to do this, they say, in a fair and balanced way. But you heard there are concerns here in Lancashire.
Thanks, Jack. Great stuff. It just doesn't make sense, Nana. They're raising around £560 million from this tax raid on farmers. And for the risk-reward for the bad headlines, the chaos, the concern, the fear, what's the point?
Did you know, again, it's the same theory, I think, like with the VAT on private schools. Once again, Rachel Reeves and her government perceive farmers to be rich and entitled, and because they've got all that land, so they must have money, just like those who take their kids to private schools. So therefore, even though the return on investment won't really be worth it, they're still going ahead anyway.
I think it's an ideological
I think so. I think again, because it doesn't make sense. This is our food, and we need our own food to be produced. If you want to close a loophole for rich people who are taking advantage of something, then close it specifically for those people, but don't do it for the farmers. I don't think they should be taxing them in any way, shape or form in that manner at all.
Well, all eyes on Tuesday, where this massive protest in London's taking place. The police said that they have banned vehicles, tractors, combine harvesters, whatever you can think of. They're banned, apparently, but the question remains, will we still see a bit of chaos? I mean, will we see something like Just Stop Oil, where they're spraying, I don't know, horse manure up the halls of Whitehall?
No, because the farmers have too much respect. What they will do is try and highlight their plight. But Rachel Reeves, you need to listen to what people are saying. You were elected to do what the people are expecting, and this is good enough. Well, stay with us. We will talk more. Up next, a migration madness in Britain. We have the biggest migration surge of any rich nation, as it's revealed the previous government wasted £15 million of taxpayers' money on an asbestos-filled migrant camp. Stay tuned, that's on the way. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's speak now to Sales Director at Savills for Quinta Properties, Raquel Santos, who is live for us in Portugal. Raquel, good to see you this morning. Why are all these celebrities flocking to Portugal all of a sudden?
Yeah, I guess it's just because of basically the great lifestyle that we have, security, Portugal has kind of been a hidden, tucked away gem for quite a while that people didn't realize existed. And with the international flights that, with the American flights coming in, it's kind of been put back on the map as a country that's worth visiting and worth investing in due to the secure investments that we offer in real estate.
Raquel, is it anything to do with tax rates? Because I think capital gains tax is, I think if it's over a certain amount, you pay half of your rate, which is 28%. Capital gains on shares and cryptocurrencies is 0. Is it anything to do with that? Because over here in the UK, big storm at the moment about millionaires apparently leaving in exodus because of the mooted increases in taxes in just a few weeks.
Yes, so obviously the alterations that are happening with the UK in terms of the tax that's being implemented on the capital gains, as you mentioned, we've definitely noticed has become a big drive, mostly on the vendor side as well, who are looking to sell because they don't want to be hit, with these higher capital gains, which is close to coming into effect.
Raquel, have you noticed then millionaires, high net worth people from the UK getting in touch with you looking to relocate?
Definitely. It's for multiple reasons, obviously, the changes that are due to come into place, obviously, and Portugal just seems to be a safe option always when things do kind of change. People opt to come into Portugal because we're quite steady, we're quite stable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Nearly 10 to 11 on Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akwe.
Now, it's been revealed that the previous government spent £15 million on buying a derelict prison site to house migrants, but it turned out to be too contaminated with asbestos to be used.
Sounds like the house I'm buying. It comes as Britain's immigration surge is bigger than all other rich nations, so will we ever get a grip on the crisis?
Well, joining us now, the director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, Steve Wolfe. Steve, once again, it's quite obvious to me that we were taking on more than we can chew in terms of migrants coming into this country. Talk to me about this particular report, then. What exactly does that mean?
Yes, this is a testing report from a non-British organisation, the United Nations itself, the OECD's organisation, has said that Britain, out of all the major economies of the world, is taking nearly 760,000 permanent migrants into this country. They call those people who have settled here. That's why they use this really interesting language, permanent type. But to you and I, this is basically people who are staying here forever and have been given a right to live here by a visa. But this number is significant because we have been saying for a long time that we've had major population increases in this country, nearly 5 million in 10 years, that we have net migration over 1 million, 790,000 so far for last year, and that is unsustainable. But I want to put this in terms of a figure for people to concentrate their minds on. How many people have come here in the last 10 years? From 1066 to 1800. We only had a population increase of 5 million. That's the same as we've had in the last 10 years.
So, Stephen, this is happening all over the world, not least in America with the southern border. What's going on? What is the reason for this global tranche of migration? Is there an agenda behind it? If so, what is the agenda? Or is it just sort of the global shift in people off the back of, I don't know, economic endeavours or natural disasters going on, do you think?
Well, you caused me to sigh there because, first of all, when you start saying an agenda, people start saying, "Oh, you're a rumour monger. You're some sort of a conspiracy theorist." And I was always a way of saying, no, maybe not consider that. But two things have changed my mind about this. First of all, is the documentation that Orban, as the leader of Hungary, has obtained about non-governmental organisations who have been provided funding to show that the European Union should have 1 million immigrants a year coming in every year. And that, I think, is an important factor to say who's driving this. And the person driving this is an agenda from Soros. The second one, why I do believe that there is a real increase and a determination from the elites in our society, is that economically, the Bank of England, the Treasury, the institutions doing economics are saying that GDP is more important than anything else. And the biggest driver of GDP is cheap immigration with low wages. And I think that's the agenda. Keep low wages to support businesses in the West who are having declining populations from birth. And that's the only way we can compete with China and the East.
Now, the figures that you quote in terms of for this particular report, did they also take into account illegal migration? Because obviously we've got a lot of legal migration as well. So, and obviously the legal migration is actually the biggest number. But does it take into account illegal?
Now, this is where a slight con comes into it, because they're using the phrase perm type, which for them means, so the OECD means that it's people who are permanently allowed to come here. And what they're hiding there is the fact that if you're making a claim for asylum and you've been granted right to remain, then that counts within those numbers. So this is why I have a problem with the United Nations, the UNHCR, the OECD, and indeed also the OBR in this country, is that they're constantly trying to merge legal and illegal migration into one and will not divide the two properly and refuse to give us many times the proper figures.
Although people might say that is a bit of a conspiracy theory, you know, even though you say you've read documentation, I mean, some people kind of see these things as conspiracy theorists, but I do think that there is something going on in terms of us taking on cheap labour. Good for business.
Yeah. All right, Stephen, thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it. Other people would argue as well, I don't buy it, but they'll say climate change is making people move en masse. They'd say that we've raided places like Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. That's why people are moving as well. So, interesting debate.
All right, still to come. This morning we're talking about the economy, how growth has slowed. Rachel Reeves has sat down with GB News. We'll bring you that interview next.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, largely cloudy, especially in the north, and there will be some rain out there, particularly for northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. These drizzly outbreaks of rain, not amounting to much, but making it feel rather unpleasant with a lot of low cloud in these areas as well. Brighter skies for eastern Scotland, parts of northeast England, but the best of the sunshine will be through parts of Wales, the Midlands and the south of England. A very pleasant day here, highs of 11 to 13 Celsius with light winds. Similar temperatures further north, but not feeling nearly as pleasant for northwestern parts because of the brisk breeze, and also because the rain's going to turn heavier and more persistent later on for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. In fact, a narrow but fairly intense band of rain begins to move in during the evening into northwest Scotland. A short-lived spell, but could be quite lively while it lasts. Ahead of that, Northern Ireland, Northern England staying largely cloudy with some low cloud about and some drizzle. Likewise for North Wales. But we keep the clear skies for some time in the south, and under those clear skies, a few mist and fog patches will form overnight. Perhaps a touch of frost, some chilly pockets here and there, but actually the cloud does slowly increase from the north as the night goes on, and that will tend to clear the fog in places and leave temperatures at around the mid-single figures by dawn. Further north, we've got the band of rain sinking south across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then into Northern England and North Wales for Saturday morning. It's weakening, but it will be cloudy with outbreaks of rain for some time. In the south, mostly dry and bright, but further north, skies brighten, but it turns colder with these winds coming from the north-northwest, gales for northern Scotland and frequent showers, and these showers will be falling as sleet and snow for the north of Scotland.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning. It's 11 a.m. on Friday, November the 15th. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Nana Akweer.
Now, the UK, good morning to you. The UK's economy growth has slowed to 0.1% between July and September. The Chancellor says that she is not satisfied.
We're 4 months into this government. There's a lot more to do to turn around the growth performance of the last decade or so.
Good morning from a fusion energy tech company in Oxfordshire, where I've been talking to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, about those disappointing growth figures, but also about Brexit, about Donald Trump, about farmers, and about 9-year-olds being investigated by the police. We'll bring you that interview in full shortly here on GB News.
Stateside, Donald Trump's top team gets bigger as he appoints Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his health secretary. We'll give you the lowdown in just a tick.
Bobby's on the tweet. The journalist Alison Pearson has been investigated by Essex police for a non-crime hate incident or allegedly stirring up racial hatred in her social media post last November. And 3 police forces were called in to investigate.
And breaking news this morning, TV presenter Davina McCall has revealed she's undergoing brain surgery today to remove a benign tumour and has asked fans to pray for her.
58-year-old Mike Tyson takes on YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul in the early hours of Saturday morning. Will it be the fight of the century or a celebrity circus?
Oh, yeah, so Catherine Forster just mentioned it then. A story on the front of the Telegraph this morning. A 9-year-old child was visited in class by police after he called a classmate a word beginning with R, ending with D to maybe signify somebody isn't very intelligent. Insane. Why are police going to classrooms to deal with silly spats?
Do you know what? I would normally be thinking this is, a bit, but some of those children and some of their behaviours, I mean, my poor son has had to deal with a lot of it, so I kind of know that sometimes you need to get them early and actually maybe frighten them a little bit so they then evolve in a different way.
You don't mind it? The cops going into classrooms?
Well, when we were younger, the police would come in and talk to us and everything. I would like a bit more of it, actually, but on a more general level, to give police a bit more respect, young people more respect for the police.
OK, all right, I got it. I hear you. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Do any police in schools policing the thoughts of our kids' language?
Policing the thoughts, but letting them know that their language can be dangerous and also can lead to other things. If you're young, I think it's a good time to kind of help the children.
OK, interesting. That's one side of the debate.
So I know.
All right, let's get your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, Nana, thank you very much. Well, the top stories breaking news this hour. The Duke of Sussex is one of two claimants whose claims are still live against the publisher of The Sun over allegations of unlawful information gathering. His barrister has told the High Court today. Well, a hearing today heard that Harry and former Labour deputy leader Tom Watson are now the only people continuing their claims against News Group newspapers after several others settled their cases. The two remaining cases are expected to go to trial in January, with Harry alleging he was targeted by journalists and private investigators working for NGN, which also published the now-defunct News of the World. The publisher has previously denied unlawful activity took place at The Sun. The UK's economy barely grew between July and September, with uncertainty about the budget being blamed for weak growth. It was expected to meet the same 0.2% growth figures reported in Germany and Japan, but instead the economy grew by 0.1%. The GDP figures have pushed the UK towards the bottom of the G7 growth table for the third quarter of the year. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she's not satisfied with the figures.
Of course, I'm not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt, either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years. That's why in my Mansion House speech last night, I set out a number of measures to unlock long-term patient capital from our pension funds to get better returns to savers, but crucially to free up investment, to invest in start-up and scale-up businesses and in the opportunities for infrastructure investments in Britain.
Well, responding to those figures as well, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says they're extremely disappointing.
Further evidence that I'm afraid this government has no plan for growth. I mean, in fact, in the budget, as we know, national insurance on employers rocketing up, which is going to be inflationary, depress wages and lead to higher unemployment. So I'm afraid, even if you look at the forecasts that the OBR produced at the time of the budget, that shows lower growth across the forecast than they were forecasting when we were in office back in the spring. So great to talk about growth, but there's a difference between talking about it and actually delivering it.
Rachel Reeves told City Chiefs she plans to create pension mega funds that will power growth in the economy and reward British savers. In her first Mansion House speech as Chancellor, Ms Reeves announced plans for the mega funds, which she said could bring in £80 billion to invest in businesses and infrastructure. She addressed issues of financial instability and promised to make economic growth Labour's central mission in the coming years. The mega funds will mirror schemes in Australia and Canada, where pension funds take advantage of size to invest in assets that have higher growth potential. In other news, the Home Office spent £15 million buying a derelict prison contaminated with asbestos amid political pressure to stop housing migrants in hotels, according to Whitehall's spending watchdog. The National Audit Office says the government department cut corners and paid more than it needed to in order to acquire the North Eye site in Bexhill-on-Sea in East Sussex. It said it was ultimately deemed unfit for its intended purpose due to contamination. A report published today shows the site was bought for around £6.3 million, but the Home Office completed the sale in September last year for around £15.4 million, more than double what had been paid for the site 12 months earlier. Television presenter Davina McCall has revealed she's undergoing brain surgery to remove a benign tumour. The 57-year-old shared the news in an Instagram post this morning, saying she has a very rare colloid cyst that affects only 3 in a million people. She explained that she received the diagnosis by chance after booking in for a health scan, adding that she wants the public to pray for her, but that she's in good spirits. Gary Lineker says hosting Match of the Day for more than 2 decades has been an absolute joy and privilege, but it's the right time for him to exit and someone else to take the helm. The 63-year-old will step down as host at the end of the season. Speaking on his podcast, The Rest is Football, he said all things have to come to an end. Gary Lineker has refused to speculate who would be taking his place, as rumours have been growing around Mark Chapman, the regular Match of the Day 2 presenter, Football Focus host Alex Scott and BBC Sports coverage presenter Gabby Logan. A new survey suggests around 6.7 million people plan to cut back on showers and baths to afford rising energy costs over the winter period. The poll for National Deadline found 45% of people are heading into this winter period worried about their finances, with 1 in 4 reporting it having a negative effect on their health and 1 in 5 saying they're losing sleep over money concerns. Latest Ofgem figures show energy arrears now stand at a record £3.7 billion. The average household energy bill increased by £149 a year from October the 1st, when the industry regulator raised its price cap to £1,717 for a typical household in England, Scotland and Wales. And in sport, boxing champion Mike Tyson slapped Jake Paul at a charged weigh-in for tonight's controversial heavyweight fight in Texas. After both men had weighed in, Paul crawled across the floor before rising up to Tyson's eye line for the traditional final head-to-head. Well, 58-year-old Tyson then slapped his opponent right across the face, prompting security and team members to rush in to separate the fighters. Paul, however, seemed unfazed. Instead, he blew kisses at the former champion. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to GB News. It's just gone 9 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom with myself, Nana Aquia and Ben Leo.
Morning. Hope you're well. Hope you've had a good week and a pending weekend. Any plans for the weekend?
I'll be here.
Oh, yes, of course.
My show. It's 3
brilliant
o'clock.
show.
Are you doing your show?
I'm covering Patrick tonight and I am covering... Well, I'm doing Saturday Morning Live in the morning. Tune in tonight, by the way, to Patrick's show. Sorry to hijack this and plug Patrick's show, but
That's fine.
we've got
I'll do some of mine as well.
very special show tonight. I won't say more than that, but tune in for it.
Well, why?
It's to do with a new migrant centre hotel that's been rushed up and erected very, very quickly, no consultation with the public. The Home Office has said that there's such a backlog of asylum claims, they had to get this hotel converted into a migrant facility very, very quickly.
Is that the one in Milton Keynes? Or near Milton Keynes? Oh.
TBC. Tune in tonight, 9 to 11 p.m.
All right, but listen, also you've been getting in touch with your views. David said, just seen Rachel Thieves on here. She looks like she's aged 15 years. Well, I imagine maybe she does feel like that, and that's not to comment on her looks, but, you know, when you're doing a job like that, must be all the pressure. Welcome to the daily life of a farmer. See, that's what he's saying, you know, because that's tough. Who else have we got here? A lot of people commenting on the finance and what the Labour government are doing. This one from Grumpy Grandad, he said, I've always liked Davina. I wish her well. I hope that they can sort her out safely. I'm sure they will. They can do some amazing things today. Get better soon, Davina.
Yeah, best wishes to Davina McCall. She announced this morning, if you missed it, that she's going into hospital today for surgery on a benign tumour. Apparently it's a type of tumour that affects only 3 million people?
Something like that.
And she said if it continues to grow, then there's going to be serious problems. But yeah, thoughts and prayers with Davina McCall.
I've just got to read this one from Yol, who said, first time I disagree with Nana about policing 9-year-olds.
Oh, yes, that's a good conversation.
I don't think that the police should police them in a sense like that, so you come in and... You know, but I mean, I've heard 9-year-olds and younger than that saying things like, I'll kill you and your family when you turn 18 and stuff like that. So I think that... And these and even younger kids saying some terrible things. So it's not so much policing their words, but actually I think police should go into schools like they did when we were younger and, you know, get the kids to have a little bit more respect for the police forces, and hopefully with that they'll have more respect for each other. That's what I mean.
I agree with that. But this incident reported in the Telegraph this morning is that a 9-year-old was approached by police and warned, and I think even threatened with a non-crime hate incident, the similar situation with Alison Pearson, because he called, or she called, a classmate a disparaging word, essentially calling them thick. And another classmate was warned in the same fashion, in the same school, for saying a classmate smelt like fish. I mean, surely kids can tease each other and say, you smell like fish, without the cops getting involved.
It's not very nice, but I don't think I want the police involved in that. But I do think that I sometimes think that people put this lovely, wonderful halo over some very young people who can be very awful. And I actually would like to see police go into schools and talk to the kids a bit more. That's just my thoughts.
OK, good conversation to have. gbnews.com/your say. Keep those comments coming in. But let's turn our attention now to the UK economy, because growth has slowed down in the first 3 months of this Labour government.
We're now joined by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. So for all the rhetoric, all the growth, or the very little of it, we seem to be going backwards. Rachel Reeves seems very firm in her decisions, yet it seems quite obvious to most of us that growth won't be happening with those rules in place.
Good morning, Ben and Nana. I'm at an energy fusion tech company here in Oxfordshire, where I was talking to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, just a little bit earlier. Very poor growth figures. As you said, she was at Mansion House in London last night talking to the city along with the Governor of the Bank of England. The projections for growth following the budget are pretty poor too, I have to say. Anyway, I asked her about growth that the government have made so much of. I asked her about Brexit and Trump and farmers. I also asked her about that 9-year-old boy being investigated by the police. That's getting everybody talking today. Let's have a look now at what she had to say.
Chancellor, this government has said over and over again that you are all about growth, but the figures out today, pretty anemic. The projections from the OBR following the budget, not great either. When are we going to see real growth, and when is that going to feed through into people starting to feel a bit better off?
Growth is the #1 mission of this government, and after 14 years of stagnation, it can't come too soon. Obviously, I want the growth numbers to be stronger than those published today, which is why in the first week in office, I announced a comprehensive set of planning reforms and the creation of a national wealth fund. It's why in the budget I committed to the £20 billion of support for R&D and investment in infrastructure. And it's why in the Mansion House speech last night, I announced a comprehensive set of plans for our pensions industry to unlock long-term patient capital, to help small businesses and startups, and also to invest in infrastructure.
You mentioned wanting a closer relationship with the European Union in that speech, something that the Governor of the Bank of England talked about as well, in that it had hampered growth, Brexit had hampered growth. How's that going to work? And can you reassure GB News viewers, many of whom voted for Brexit, that Brexit is safe with this government?
However you voted in the referendum, it's undeniable that it is harder for businesses today to trade with our nearest neighbours and trading partners in the European Union. It doesn't mean that we should go back into the EU or the single market or customs union, but we're doing a reset of that relationship because it's in our British national interest to improve trade flows and make it easier for great British businesses to sell into European markets. And that's why next month I'll be attending the Eurogroup finance ministers meeting to make that case in Brussels for free and open trade.
It's all been complicated, though, hasn't it, by an incoming President Trump and the possibility of tariffs and a trade war. You're going to have to make choices, aren't you? How do you see that playing out, the challenges of a Trump administration?
Well, I believe in free and open trade. It's good for Britain and it's good for the United States. It's served us well for many decades. Trade between our two countries is worth more than £300 billion. Last time that Donald Trump was president of the United States, trade between the UK and the US increased, and so did investment flows. I want to see that happen again, and I'm confident that we will work closely with President-elect Donald Trump and his team to improve trade and improve investment between our two countries, because we have a special relationship, the closest of bonds, and we will continue to build on that.
Do you think there's a reasonable chance of Britain getting a trade deal with America? And are you going to to favour America or favour Europe? Is it possible to do both? Because it's going to be a very difficult balancing act, surely.
I'm ambitious for Britain, and I'm confident about our ability to do deals and to work with our trading partners across the globe, whether that is in Europe or in the United States, or indeed in some of the fastest growing economies in the world, where we also want to help British businesses to be able to sell into those markets. If we're going to grow our economy, we need to be helping our brilliant British businesses to export and trade around the world, and that's what I'm determined to do as Chancellor.
Farmers, lots of family farms, very upset, saying that some of them will go out of business as a result of the changes to inheritance tax. You're not going to budge on that, are you? The government's talked a lot about energy security, but what about food security? Is that not important to the government?
This government had to make a number of difficult decisions in the budget last month to put our public finances back on a firm footing. Difficult decisions on spending, on welfare and on tax. But I would just say this around agricultural property relief. If you're a couple who own a farm, including a home on the farm, you can pass on £3 million tax-free to the next generation. And beyond that £3 million, you are taxed at half of the rate that everybody else is taxed for inheritance tax, at 20% compared to 40%. And where there is an inheritance tax bill, you can pay that over 10 years interest-free in a way that no one else paying inheritance tax can. So I think this is a fair deal for farmers, whilst also ensuring that we bring in the money to get our public finances back on a firm footing.
And just finally, you've talked about public services and reform of them, but story today about 9-year-old children be investigated by the police over comments they've made in the playground. Surely police should be investigating real crimes. Isn't that a ridiculous use of police resources?
I agree with you, and that's why we've committed to ensure that there are 13,000 neighbourhood police officers and community support officers in our local areas, ensuring that our town centres and our high streets are safe, and that people feel that they can go out in the evenings and feel safe in their local communities. That's the priority for police, and that's the priority of this Labour government.
So you don't think they should be investigating 9-year-olds' comments?
I don't think that that is the best use of police time.
Chancellor, thanks so much for talking to us on GB News today.
Thank you.
So that was, of course, Rachel Reeves speaking to Catherine Forster earlier today. See, yeah, I'm with her. I don't think they should be investigating, but I'd like to see police a bit more active in schools. But look, Rachel Reeves talked about how you can't deny that business is harder with Brexit. Well, of course, business is harder with Brexit because they didn't want us to leave. So they've deliberately made sure that it's more difficult so that it puts off other countries from leaving the European Union. But it opens the door for business all around the world, which is far better than just being restricted to one main trading bloc who have control.
And it's also much harder for businesses after your budget, Chancellor. I'm sorry. The front page of the Daily Express today saying that small businesses are going to be experiencing up to £3,500 in extra costs. Many saying they're going to close. So you can't just blame it on Brexit, something that happened many, many years ago, arguably wasn't properly implemented.
Yeah, it hasn't been even now. But, you know, they're kind of trying to blame something else, but it's staring her in the face that the NI hike will affect not just small businesses, but larger businesses as well. And, in fact, the big companies like Asda, who are talking to Rachel Reeves and saying, look, no, this is a wrong move, but she's not listening. She's going to go ahead, and I think I'm concerned that this Labour government will destroy the economy.
Well, the warning signs are there, I guess. The first 3 months of growth, 0.1%. I thought this whole administration, all throughout the campaign, all we heard about was the focus on growth. It's a pretty lacklustre start, to say the least, especially, by the way, when you compare it to the last 6 months of the Conservative government. 0.6%, 0.7% GDP, the best in Europe, the best in decades. That's the economy Labour picked up and inherited. They also inherited falling inflation, lower cost of living, lower mortgage rates at the time. They've now just crept up again, surprise, surprise. And the Bank of England base rate going down as well. That's the economy they inherited.
Well, they claim there's a £22 billion black hole, but that black hole's got big because then it was 40 billion, and then suddenly... So I think they're all falling into it, which is why it's getting bigger. But frankly, I really urge the Labour government to listen to what the people are saying, because it's not about what party you supported, it's about the British national interest. And I don't think that inheritance tax on farmers at lower thresholds, or even doing that, is in the interest of this country.
It's only raising £500 million as well. It's nothing. Anyway, up next, find out why all these lefties are quitting X, formerly known as Twitter. Even the Guardian newspaper has gone. Good riddance, Hannah.
Bye-bye.
Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Let's speak now to Charlie Mullins, who's the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, and entrepreneur Oliver Hodgson. Really good to see you both this morning. Charlie, let's start with you. Has working from home and the culture surrounding working from home killed work experience, do you think?
Undoubtedly. Many companies now are not getting youngsters in for the work experience because of the fact they don't have the staff in. So if they're only in 2 days a week, they're not going to get in the youngsters. They've got no one to train them. So it's killed it totally. And if you think it's bad now, probably 4 or 5 years from now, it'll be absolutely ridiculous. This working from home, I said from day one, is going to kill youngsters' futures, youngsters' careers, and getting people into the workplace. So now the damage is showing through, unfortunately. COVID finished a couple of years ago. The working from home should have stopped and get people back into the workplace.
I mean, Oliver, you have to say it's difficult to see how people in a work-from-home environment can do any sort of on-the-job training at all.
It's really interesting, the work experience piece, actually, because we ran an internship program in the summer here. We had 5 people in the office in person and they really thrived. But we did have a couple of people who joined remotely because of their own reasons, right, and where they were. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that as well, because I've got clients who have completely remote teams. Now, I don't. I have an office and our team are based in here. But our clients who do, they're able to offer work experience opportunities digitally with fantastic technology to people across the world, right? So they have people in their team who are working from all sorts of different continents, which is obviously fantastic. But I agree with Charlie, right? You cannot knock in-person engagement. You cannot knock being in the office.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 11:25. Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Right, joining us now, broadcaster Claire Muldoon, also political commentator Andy Williams. All right, so we start with, we've done the police forces probing. Should we go on? I love this one. Elon Musk derides Guardian departure from X. The Guardian, so Elon Musk is the owner of X. He's dismissed the Guardian as irrelevant. They've decided to leave his platform.
Well, the Guardian is irrelevant. The only thing I read the Guardian for is some reviews for theatre, etc., because the theatre are still, and the arts, they're still very well reviewed by the Guardian journalists. But we don't only have the Guardian that's left X now. We have Jamie Lee Curtis in her departure speech, as if she was actually gaining an accolade for this. She akined it to admitting she had an issue. She was using the 10-point or the 12-point plan with Alcoholics Anonymous, and she implored the help for us to know the wisdom, right? She's left. Bristol suspension suspension bridge.
Yeah, the Clifton suspension bridge. We're really sad to see that go from Twitter, aren't we?
Well, was it suspended? Let me just think. But, you know, it's just ridiculous. But the idea that these people are actually putting it out on the platform of X, explaining to the myriad of followers that they have that they were leaving. Irony, muchly.
I think
What's
it's pretty
going on?
self-important of a lot of these people and of The Guardian to think that they're going to somehow, you know, as if Elon Musk is going to go, oh, no, please, no, come back,
Please stay, please stay.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I would say I do think X, Twitter, whatever we're going to call it, I do think it's declined as a platform in terms of its usability. I think I've experienced that if you complain about racist tweets or tweets that are expressly violent, you know, nothing really happens.
Well, it did to Alison Pearson.
Well, yeah, it did. But I think in terms of that's a police issue. I'm talking about the platform itself.
That goes back to the wider debate about free speech. I argue I'm a free speech absolutist. Of course, don't agree with abuse or racism or anything. I mean, I see some awful stuff on my Twitter feed.
Yeah, but you're not an absolutist.
But I agree it should be on there. If people want to say that kind of trash, that's their right.
But the issue that I think people are going to find by moving away from X, they're going to start their own echo chamber. And what's the platform they're all moving to? Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
And even, you know, it's touchy-feely, it's going to be great, it's going to be utopic.
People will get bored of that. Listen,
they will.
A lot of the people on the left are, to be honest, they're the worst. I get so much abuse from people who are supposedly #be kind. What it is they can't handle that there's another opinion now.
They can't handle the truth. Is that what you were just about to say?
Another opinion is prevailing.
Brilliant film.
They don't like it. They want to be able to just spout out this nonsense at people and be the arbiters.
I think that's true for a lot of people, and actually it's not healthy to have your views and it's terrible on the left. I think on the far left it's particularly bad. It's bad on the right as well, and it's not excuse me, it's really not healthy to have your views just constantly reinforced in that echo chamber at all.
It's not.
And it doesn't help your critical thinker. It's just not good for anyone.
It's not good for anyone. And I think, you know, to breed society, we need to involve children as much as we possibly can in not only political discourse, but everything. And we need to form views. We need to form minds. And we can only do that by teaching both sides.
Yeah. What about this great one from the Daily Mail? So a £100 million air traffic control meltdown last summer could not be fixed quickly because a vital support engineer was allowed to work from home.
Yeah, so last August bank holiday, a load of our airports came to a standstill, and I'm sure many viewers will remember. And basically, an inquiry has found that the reason is the engineer who could have fixed the problem was working remotely. He or she had to get a train an hour and a half presumably into London, to go and put a password into a computer in an office and reset it, and then that didn't work either. I think what this reminds us is that, and I'm in favour of hybrid working, but it's horses for courses, and there are some jobs that cannot be done from home. They're
safely.
really safely, and not just safely, but 700,000 people were affected because NATS, National Air Traffic Control Service, didn't think, maybe we need this particular person to be in the office just in case there's a disaster.
It was as simple as a password, of inputting a password that they couldn't do remotely, that had to be done on the mainframe in the system for the air traffic control. As you quite rightly said, Andy, and we don't normally agree on things, I have to say, but it is horses for courses. If the hybrid working movement is going to be, you will allow people to work from home for a certain time. There's jobs that clearly can be done from home, call centre jobs, but jobs requiring national security, people's lives at risk, definitely, in my view, can't.
All right, and very quickly, we've got about a minute on this one. Time to rebuild trade relations with the EU, the bank governor says. And
well, he's absolutely right. I mean, trade in goods, the UK has gone down since Brexit between 13 and 22%.
Is that our fault? Isn't it the EU who don't particularly want to do the trade with us unless we do things?
Well, the EU want to do trade on their terms.
Exactly.
And so it's a negotiation. The point is we had a disastrous, botched Brexit deal by Boris Johnson that not only has affected our economy, but has seen net migration go through the roof. So it hasn't suited anybody.
But I think it's only fair to acknowledge the part that the role the EU have played on this as well.
But
this is not really all our fault.
It's not all their fault. They're behaving like spoiled children on a bad divorce.
They're being rational and looking after
rational?
They are.
No, they're not, Andy.
Yes, they are, and looking after their own interests because they don't want anybody else to leave the EU.
Do you know what the other issue I have, actually, the other domestic issue I have is this government is putting so much cash into the public services. They actually want to invest pension pots into public services, but they are not allowing basic freedom of governance, of independence, of enterprise to flourish during this term of government. And I really worry because there's going to be no money left for anything. And they will, do you know what they'll blame? They'll blame Brexit.
Yeah, it's a degenerate gamble doing that, by the way.
It's ridiculous.
Putting all your eggs in one basket, then investing it in your own public services.
I mean it's our own public services that don't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you so much, Claire Muldoon and also Andy Williams. Time now to get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben Nana, thank you very much. The top stories this hour. The UK's economy barely grew between July and September, with uncertainty about the budget being blamed for weak growth. It was expected to meet the same 0.2% growth figures reported in Germany and Japan, but instead the economy grew by 0.1%. The GDP figures have pushed the UK towards the bottom of the G7 growth table for the third quarter of the year. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she's not satisfied with the figures.
Of course, I'm not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt, either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years. That's why in my Mansion House speech last night, I set out a number of measures to unlock long-term patient capital from our pension funds to get better returns to savers, but crucially to free up investment, to invest in start-up and scale-up businesses and in the opportunities for infrastructure investments in Britain.
Also responding to the figures this morning, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride said they're extremely disappointing.
Further evidence that I'm afraid this government has no plan for growth. I mean, in fact, in the budget, as we know, national insurance on employers rocketing up, which is going to be inflationary, depress wages and lead to higher unemployment. So I'm afraid, you know, even if you look at the forecasts that the OBR produced at the time of the budget, that shows lower growth across the forecast than they were forecasting when we were in office back in the spring. So great to talk about growth, but there's a difference between talking about it and actually delivering it.
And the Duke of Sussex is one of two claimants whose claims are still live against the publisher of The Sun over allegations of unlawful information gathering, his barrister has told the High Court. Well, a hearing today heard that Harry and former Labour Deputy Leader Tom Watson are now the only people continuing their claims against News Group newspapers after several other people settled their cases. The two remaining cases are expected to go to trial in January, with Harry alleging he was targeted by journalists and private investigators working for NGN, which also published the now-defunct News of the World. The publisher has previously denied unlawful activity took place at The Sun. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. Up at noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Miriam. Right, so what's coming up on your show? What have you got?
Well, we are focusing on this continued free speech row, not just the Telegraph journalists involved now, but children who have been reported to the police for basically saying hurty things to their classmates.
It's completely stunning. It wasn't a million years ago that I myself was on a playground at school. Let's go sort of 20 years back.
What did they call you, Tom?
Only 5 years back, Tom.
I'm sure.
So young.
Yeah, no, many words were thrown. But some of the words that I've been reading
I'd like to know.
Well, we've actually. Well, I'm not sure.
Not suitable for daytime
I'm not sure
TV.
if I'm allowed to say this. We've had a briefing before our show because we need to know which hurty words we're actually allowed to say on the television. And some words that I didn't think were particularly hurty are apparently too hurty for the denizens of daytime television. But it is extraordinary. These are fairly run-of-the-mill playground insults. Insults that you'll hear on American television shows, sort of the things that you'd hear on Family Guy or South Park.
But usually,
and these are
usually there's more
resulting.
to it than that. They're usually, when it comes to the point where they're talking to the police, there's more to it. Because I, on the other side of this, have heard young children saying really terrible things, and you'd think, no.
But the question has to be, though, childhood is surely about practising those kind of boundaries, ready for when you're an adult. So children regularly regularly hit each other. I mean, that's what childhood is about. You don't refer your child to the police for GBH when they punch their sibling.
I think there'll be more to this than meets the eye, because underneath a lot of that, this child may have been excluded from other clubs and this and that. There'll be more.
There was another child who said that a classmate smelt like fish, and they too had a talking to from the police.
But the question is it ever appropriate for police to police language of children?
I don't think so.
I think that's the question.
I'd like to see them go into schools a bit more, talk to the kids more, give them some sort of levels of what is and isn't acceptable. But I'd just say that on that, there's often a lot more underneath that than just the surface.
Although, as we've learnt from the Alison Pearson case, one of the insane things about these so-called non-crime hate incidents is that if you have one of these lodged against you, it's kept in a file in some police bureaucracy somewhere, and you don't know that. You don't know that the police are holding something on you. So even if... So for the example of police going into schools, teaching, talking to children, I think everyone can agree with that. That's a good thing. But there's this weird separation that's going on where people are being reported by third parties. They're not allowed to know those third parties. Then information is being held by the police, and they're not allowed to know what information is being held.
That's ridiculous.
And the point of living under common law, which we have in the UK, is that you can do anything except those things which are banned. And if police are recording things that aren't crimes, what does that say about the state of our law?
It's a non-crime. That's what they told you. So that's why it's
everything's a non-crime. Everything's a non-crime.
It's ridiculous, but I'm sure that there must be some against me on some of my monologues.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I'd love to see your file. But it's not just the non-crime hate incident show. We're also going to be talking about some of these Donald Trump appointees and how that's upsetting a lot of the establishment.
All the right people.
States. And some concern, I think, some people have.
Upsetting all the right people.
But also, of course, a shrinking economy. What on earth's going on?
Rachel Reeves is what's going on. Tom and also Miriam will look forward to that.
I would argue as well, I don't obviously condone bullying, but bullying is character building. Everyone was bullied at school. I had chewing gum thrown in my hair. I used to do...
Well, think what happened to me. I was the only black one.
Did you some serious abuse?
Well, they tried, but they couldn't catch me. I could run.
Very good, very good.
All right, good stuff. Look forward to that. All that's coming up at midday. But let us know. That's not it from us, is it?
No, that's it. Don't go anywhere.
It says here it's the end of the show. Of course, it's not. 20 minutes left. Still plenty more to come on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Another quiet day for many of us, with some bright spells, especially in the south, but a lot of cloud for many, and some outbreaks of rain in the northwest, but most especially the far northwest of Scotland, with this cold front approaching. Now, this cold front is going to introduce a significant change in the weather during the weekend and into early next week. But for the time being, we keep high pressure, we keep things relatively benign. There has been some fog and frost in the southwest first thing. That'll tend to lift. And then bright spells for the south, but areas of cloud floating about. The thickest cloud will be in the far north, where it's going to be raining and windy, feeling unpleasant as that rain moves in for northern and northwest Scotland. Drizzly for the southwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwest England. But the heaviest rain will affect the northwest of Scotland as we end the afternoon and go into the evening. Gusty winds associated with this as well. Some clear spells there for Aberdeenshire, but otherwise a lot of cloud for the northern half of the UK. Nevertheless, we keep some clear spells going into the night time across the south, and because of that, once again, temperatures will fall away and some fog and frost patches will form. But the front that's bringing the heavy rain to northwest Scotland tends to sink south overnight into southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and then eventually northern England by dawn. A relatively weak feature, but it is going to bring a spell of rain and gusty winds, and it's introducing much colder air to parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland for the start of Saturday. In fact, we'll see a mix of rain, sleet and hail showers at lower levels for northern Scotland and some snow over the hills. The wind's picking up strength as well, with gales for the far north of Scotland. Meanwhile, much lighter winds further south, with a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain moving south. Highs of 13 Celsius in the south.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
Is he indecisive? incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Thank you for your emails. Lots flying in on this debate about police visiting schools. Have you got some?
I've got one. Stephen Butler says, please, no more a queer. 2 days is enough. Just because, listen.
Who said that?
It's Stephen Butler. That's what he says.
Behave.
Yeah, just watch something else, because during my shows then, or, you know, whatever. But I'm not going anywhere, Stephen, so there.
Alistair, you've said, I'll say it again, only the mentally weak react to mere words. And Debbie, you've said, parents need to parent their kids. I've always explained meaning of words to my kids so they understand if it's the wrong thing to say.
Well, Neil in Yorkshire says that police should not be anywhere near schools. They'll be sending some woke, multicoloured hair graduate to indoctrinate kids. Listen, I'm not into that side of things, all the woke nonsense, but if it's, you know, when I was young, the police came in, they would talk to the kids and everything else like that. We had a level of respect for them. I think they should be doing a bit more of it. I have no issue with that. And also, some of those kids, I mean, remember the Bulger situation? Those kids were 10 years old.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, just giving it this carte blanche, oh, well, it's nothing, they're just kids, they're saying stuff. I think we need to be, you know, the kids need to be...
I agree. The only thing is, in these two incidents from the Telegraph, one of them was somebody saying their classmates smelled like fish.
Yeah, no, that's too far. I mean, that's just silly. I mean, that's just silly. There needs to be, you know, but I am an advocate I would say that police should go in schools, talk to the kids, give them a sense of what is right and what is wrong. But so should parents.
I used to remember, did you ever have railway safety people come in, Network Rail, and show you videos about people skipping the gates and
we
things?
had that, yeah, we did have
I used to quite enjoy those. It used to terrify me as a kid. They used to scare you to death, saying, you know, don't touch the third rail, you get electrocuted, and all these sort of old-school OG videos. I remember that was good.
A lot of more things coming in about freeing up investment. Wendy says Reeves talks about freeing up investment. What on earth is she talking about? The money she wants to get her hands on is already invested. The woman needs to get another job. People are not favourable to Rachel Reeves at the moment, and she talks about growth, and there isn't... Everything she's doing is pretty much anti-growth. I don't get it.
Yeah. Last laugh, you said the problem is with children calling names, it's usually the teachers in the past would have dealt with them in my day, but now the teachers aren't even allowed to tell the children off. Have you got a problem with teachers telling your kids off?
No, not at all. And usually I reinforce what the teacher has said, if you know, but it has to be something they should be told off for. And most of the time, I agree with the teachers. And I think this is the other thing: parents often do not agree with the teachers. So then you have a clash of opinions. As long as they're not teaching wokery, then I'm all right with that.
Nigel said, I would like to ask Ben, Nana, Tom and Miriam, how has your journalist experience changed in recent years since the launch of GB News? I just heard Tom say that he has to change the comments he would really like to say. I think he was referring to, he was checking what insults we can say on air. I couldn't say, for example, this morning, that word beginning with R, ending with D, to a disparaging word to say somebody's thick or, you know, mentally incapable. That's not allowed under Ofcom rules. So Tom was just saying there were some words which I thought was OK to say on air. Apparently it's not under broadcasting rules. That's what he was referring to.
Yeah, but yeah, for me, though, GB News has been obviously very, very good because we're able to speak like normal people and tell you how we feel about things too, and often our opinions align. But at GB News, we also love to hear what you have to say as well. Have you got another one?
Just one for you.
Oh, go on then.
Just to grow your ego a bit.
Oh, go on.
Paul says, leave Nana alone. She's lovely. She's a very strong woman on the channel. I think she's great. And Jez says, more Nana. You know it makes sense. Love the show this morning, both Nana and Ben. Well done to the two of you. Thank you. And Nana is a great presenter, strong and good sense of humour. I'd happily watch her every day.
Oh, thank you very much. Aren't you lovely? Thanks, Cynthia.
You're not just an authoritarian.
No, I'm that too.
Right, at GB News, we'd love to hear what you think. Of course, every day we'll be running our poll of the day. And today we're asking, should civil servants be allowed a 4-day working week?
Well, we're bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure you stay tuned. The final reveal will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show.
And for all the latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll.
Up next, here at GB News, we're trying to give farmers a voice as they gear up for the protests against the Chancellor's budget. Stay with us, we'll be on that case, but you're with Britain's Newsroom.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
After the Hollywood ending that Wrexham Football Club have got, can Chorley FC benefit from a bit of the old celebrity magic dust?
I can't see why not. The guys have been down a few times now, and when they do come down, obviously they're bringing that with them. A little town like Chorley doesn't see much of the charts and big stars, so it's really nice to see them, and we always welcome them when they do come down.
And Mark, give us a flavour of the level of football. I understand you're in the National League North, right? That's 6 rungs down from the top flight. I mean, you're only just down the road from Manchester City, right? But I mean, give us a flavour of the two different worlds between your club and Man City.
Our players are all part-timers. So we've got kind of fitness coaches, we've got teachers, we've got all kinds of players who have full-time jobs alongside playing. Our average crowd is probably a tenth of what you get at Man City, probably even less than that. We get about 1,500 on a home game. The thing is, we know where we are and we understand where we are, and we are a real community club. Tonight, I'm ready now. I'm off to Marine, so off over to Merseyside. Playing the likes of Liverpool and Everton over on Merseyside would be kind of a dream come true. But we know where we are. We would just love to get to the Football League. So teams like Salford, Stockport County were in our division a couple of years ago, all flying now in the Football League. We just want to do the same. We sat down with the board last year and they told us the vision for the future, and that vision most definitely is that we want to be a Football League club. When we went to the Premier League, I know the boys have been saying that they 30 years will be in the Premier League and winning it. Well, let's hope we are, and let's hope I'm still around to see that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Right, farmers are planning to protest next week over the inheritance tax raid in the Chancellor's budget.
But the government insists that they are supporting farmers, though.
We're joined now by GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is live from a farm in Lancashire. Jack, what's the latest?
Well, we're here at Gisborne Cattle Auctions. They sell cattle, sheep, all kinds of different animals for those farmers in that area that use them to make their livelihoods. You know, you can see here, this is where people would normally stand bidding for those sheep, for those cows, for those calves, as I was mentioning, and this change to inheritance tax is going to have a real impact across the board. It's not just farmers, it's businesses like this as well. We're joined with Jack Pickup, who's one of the auctioneers here. I mean, just give us a sense of the scale of your business here and what you sell.
Yeah, so we're selling roughly 600-700 cattle a week through over 2 sales and 2,000 to 3,000 sheep a week. So yeah, you know, doing well over $1 million turnover every week. it's a big job, yeah.
And just tell us, you'd be part of the knock-on impact, really. If this inheritance tax meant that farms started to split up, this business would suffer. I mean, what would that maybe do for you?
It'd make our job incredibly difficult. You look in the farming press last week, the Farmers Guardian wrote that these big landowners are being encouraged to take rented land back in. A lot of the farms around here are tenant farmers, and if that land was there, it's hard enough for a first-generation farmer to get a foot on the ladder as it is. I'm 26-year-old. The next generation is key for the future of this business.
I mean, Carl Kempson, the farmer whose farm we've been at this morning and will be later on today. I mean, you are a mixed livestock farmer. I mean, places like this, are crucial to your business.
Yeah, I sell my cattle in that ring through that door. I sell cattle in this ring, sheep through that ring, cattle in the other ring. I'm here every Thursday, more or less every Saturday. And that's what we do. We come here and sell us cattle, and that's the biggest part of our business going. If this weren't here, we'd have to rely on somebody telling us what we can draw for that lump of beast, not what we can. When you're here in an auction, it goes open to the open bidder. When you have to take it on a deadweight sale, you've got to take their price for it, the supermarket price we've got to take, and it's not a fair market.
All right, we're also joined with former MP and Sir Jake Berry. I mean, there will be people who say, well, look, the Conservatives were in power for the last 14 years. This Labour government is saying they're trying to fill a £22 billion black hole that the previous government left them. I mean, you can understand maybe why they've had to make tough decisions like this with inheritance tax.
You're right, to govern is to choose. And, of course, it's the Labour government that has decided to, apply this tax to farmers. No other government for 74 years has decided that it's the right thing to do to break up family farms by charging them inheritance tax. I understand what they say about the black hole in the public finances, and we can have a long debate about that. In fact, 10 billion quid of it has just gone in pay rises to people in the public sector. I can guarantee you that on Saturday, in this auction, there will be no farmer here who's had a 20% pay increase in the amount of money they've had this year. In fact, a livestock farm this year has seen its income go down by 20%. Why are we punishing farmers, breaking up family farms to fund pay rises for train drivers who are earning £70,000? It's crazy, and all it's going to do is destroy our industry here in Britain. We have to stop it.
All right, well, Jake, thank you so much. Also to Carl and to Jack as well. You can just hear, but really the impact long term is quite a concern for the farmers here.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. I'm back tomorrow at 3.
I'm back tonight. Up next is Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Miriam.
Yes, we'll be looking at the latest in this non-crime hate incident row where even children seem to be caught up.
And the British economy isn't growing. Per person, our economy is now shrinking. Could it be anything to do with the Chancellor's new update to her CV? Yes, she seems to have changed one of her previous job roles. What was it? We'll tell you, of course, in Good Afternoon Britain, coming up after your weather forecast.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us, largely cloudy, especially in the north, and there will be some rain out there, particularly for northwest England, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. These drizzly outbreaks of rain, not amounting to much, but making it feel rather unpleasant with a lot of low cloud in these areas as well. Brighter skies for eastern Scotland, parts of northeast England, but the best of the sunshine will be through parts of Wales, the Midlands and the south of England. A very pleasant day here, highs of 11 to 13 Celsius with light winds. Similar temperatures further north, but not feeling nearly as pleasant for northwestern parts because of the brisk breeze, and also because the rain's going to turn heavier and more persistent later on for parts of northern and northwest Scotland. In fact, a narrow but fairly intense band of rain begins to move in during the evening into northwest Scotland. A short-lived spell, but could be quite lively while it lasts. Ahead of that, Northern Ireland, Northern England staying largely cloudy with some low cloud about and some drizzle. Likewise for North Wales. But we keep the clear skies for some time in the south, and under those clear skies, a few mist and fog patches will form overnight. perhaps a touch of frost, some chilly pockets here and there, but actually the cloud does slowly increase from the north as the night goes on, and that will tend to clear the fog in places and leave temperatures at around the mid-single figures by dawn. Further north, we've got the band of rain sinking south across Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then into northern England and North Wales for Saturday morning. It's weakening, but it will be cloudy with outbreaks of rain for some time. In the south, mostly dry and bright, but further north, skies brighten, but it turns colder with these winds coming from the north-northwest, gales for northern Scotland and frequent showers, and these showers will be falling as sleet and snow for the north of Scotland.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.